click the record button so we can post this somewhere at some point. I was gonna say, yeah, I don't think today we have like a real plan. I think we haven't gotten back on and talked about things since we have the announcements from both HQ and FIT. Does anyone have any questions to lead off the discussion, or like, has everybody read them? Does somebody need to like summarize them? Which I find to be a relatively hard challenge.
I would like you to summarize them because I missed them. I haven't read them yet.
Okay, that's there we go. Okay, I was wondering. I just didn't know where to start. Okay, so I gotta find them real fast.
They're in my inbox of the 9,000 other emails.
So I've written out a summary somewhere actually. Maybe. I have a written summary. I know I typed it for a different group. I have to figure out where it went.
Alan, it's Lucia.
Yep.
While you're going looking for that, can I let the folks know that, you know, what you and I had talked about earlier?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Anything you want to announce, feel free.
Hi guys, this is Lucia from the Houston East region, and I work with FRC. I just wanted to let y'all know that myself or Dee Wallace will be reaching out to y'all over the next week or so, week and a half. And what we're trying to find out is to see where you all, and you may or may not know, where you all are at with the 2021 season, if y'all plan to come back. If so, you know, or you're gonna wait out a year or something. We're just trying to get an idea of the, you know, where y'all are at. And I know, believe me, I get it. I know schools have just started. They're trying to figure this out too, but you know, we're trying to gather some data to see where we are at with teams and everything. And then on that call, as on that reach out as well, Dee and I'll be reaching out to the East area teams, and Roxy Villa, who's the FRC program manager, she'll be reaching out to other areas of Texas. And one of the other things we'll ask you, there is going to be, First in Texas is going to have a mentor advisory council. And I won't go into the details. It's basically a voice from our FRC Texas teams. And there should be an announcement coming out about that, or you should see that on what that entails. But what we're going to ask is each team will have should designate someone from their team that will be the point person or spokesperson for your particular team on the advisory council. And, you know, that's for each team to decide. How y'all decide who that representative is up to you all, you know, but we'll be asking for that person's name as well. So I just wanted to, you know, let y'all know about that. And if you have any questions, you can email me. And I think everybody knows my email. If they don't, if you just Google Lucia Sefcik, you should be able to find it. It's all over the internet. So anyway. But
in a good way.
Yeah. So anyway, and I'll stay on here for a while and see, you know, if y'all have any questions or anything that I might be able to answer on any of the upcoming stuff.
Will that notification go out to anybody who's associated with a Texas FRC team, or only to the main contact?
That's a good question. If that, you mean about the Mentor Advisory Council?
Yes.
That's a great question. If I would answer that I'm assuming it will at least go out to the main and alternate contact. Whether, and I think, and I don't know this for sure, If it's distributed, via newsletter, if you're registered for the newsletter, but that's something, I can check into. Maybe I can check into it while y'all are having y'all's meeting and let you know. But great question.
Lucia, I don't know if this is something you can share or not, but do you know from HQ's perspective, are they giving word down about like what they're expecting as far as like participation or like teams or anything like that?
You mean in regard to the 2021 season?
Yeah, just kind of related to like you're going to be reaching out to try to figure out where teams are at. Are you like, I don't know, trying to compare that to what First HQ is saying they're thinking, or is it all just totally separate?
It's separate. This is totally for First in Texas. So, we know where our teams are at or what their intentions are. Your main and all, and did any of you all receive a survey yet from First in Texas?
I got one for FTC a couple months back, but I don't think I've seen any one FRC related.
So
No,
there should be a survey that's sent to you as well. Sent to again, that's going to be to the main and alternate contact. That should be coming out.
All right. Okay. So the announcement. So yeah. So let's see. Where's screen share? All right. So HQ's announcement was what, last Wednesday, last Tuesday, something like that. Thursday. Days. Okay. And so brief summary, the way, and some of this will be my interpretation of it, but basically they announced that First Robotics Competition registration will open October 5th, but it'll open without any sort of sign up for events at the moment. So you're only registering to be a team. And part of what they announced also is what will be able to be done without in-person events, so virtually. So they're planning to have a game design challenge where teams can design an FRC game, and then they'll be judged in some way. There's some sort of innovation challenge, which I'm still not entirely sure what the plan is there and how that works. There's some real world problem type solution thing. There's not a lot of details for any of these yet. And then there is some form of infinite recharge at home where you're able to show what your robot can do and also present to the judges, potentially even without access to your robot. So if your robot's still locked in your school and you still can't get there for some reason, students would be able to like use photos or CAD or something else, I would assume, to be able to present to the judges and get some amount of these awards. So, yeah, so, and it's competition for traditional robot-based awards. So this seems to be how they're planning to give out some of the traditional robot-based awards, at least, because they're saying they're going to do that here. In addition to our community, regardless of team registration or payment, they will continue to have opportunities to participate in online activities through First at Home. So all of these would require you to have registered to be an FRC team if you want to participate in this stuff. There's some stuff about the kit of parts where basically they will be available and new rookie teams will get something very comparable to a normal kit. Veteran kits will be limited in breadth and quantity of some sort. So who knows what that means, but they'll be smaller basically. Submitted awards will still exist. Chairman's, Dean's List, Woody Flowers. Yeah, they don't say how or what that goes into, but they just say if you're registered, you'll be able to participate in those, which makes sense. And then this was the big thing. For in-person play, we've made the difficult decision that we will open the First Robotics Competition registration built around a season experience that does not include in-person gameplay. So what they're basically saying is, if you register right now, don't assume you get to play in person. They will reevaluate, where is it? Yeah, so if conditions change, we will evaluate the possibility of adding in-person gameplay events later in the season. We have targeted January for this reevaluation. So come January, they may come out and say, okay, these regions can play, or here are the requirements for a region to play. I don't really know what their plan is, but at the moment, if you're registering, you're supposed to not assume in person. And then they did lower registration fees, so veterans are getting it's a $2,000 registration for veteran teams and a $3,000 registration for rookie teams. And then there's a message from Dean as well. I think that does about the summary of this very much longer piece. And then First in Texas, the next day, came out and basically described their efforts to be able to be prepared if the point comes where in-person events are able to happen. So they kind of described what I think some of the things we've somewhat talked about on the call in ways that it might work, but eventually events will be shorter, possibly like single day events, participants wearing face masks, other normal COVID precautions, and then likely no spectators and smaller teams, which we kind of knew was coming, but just formally told to everyone, which is nice. And then various zones and anything else we can do to keep people healthy and do everything we can to potentially be able to hold events. Whether those events will happen or not is still left to be determined, with First in Texas working with HQ to decide if any first event can happen. I think that about summarizes it. Did I miss anything?
Thank you, Alan.
So when I read that, the Innovation Challenge really seemed a whole lot to me like an extension of the project that's done in FLL.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes some sense. I would assume there'd be higher quality standards and thing where it's closer to like they talk about having like a business plan pitch and stuff. So like I know even a couple of my kids do like entrepreneurship business plan competitions and things on the side. So like that, I assume it's closer to some of that where they expect you to have more than just what I feel like the FLL projects are, where it's like, we talked to this person and here's a poster. Like,
Yeah,
there's was a global innovation challenge for the teams that do really, really well in the research project, or now it's called innovation project. And it's its own competition outside of the normal FLL. So there'll be various teams in various regions that did extremely well, and then they get promoted into this global innovation challenge or something like that. And then they have a separate event. It's not at First Championship.
That makes sense. Yeah, because I think they have longer, right? That event takes place in like the summer or early fall, something like that.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that the first post had, here are several things we thought of, but we still don't think it's safe enough to do in-person events. And then the next day, the FIT post had, here are the things we're thinking of, which was nearly an identical list. So is it safe to assume that FIT is still not going to do anything unless First gives a thumbs up?
Yes, that is what from discussions I have had, that is how I interpret FIT's email and FIM's and every other district, even though other people in the community have said other things. That is not my understanding in any way.
Right.
Namely just because it's almost impossible to do so, because First still owns the field and FMS and all of these licensing and everything else, right? So, and you don't want to burn that bridge because that just doesn't seem like a reasonable thing to do.
Right.
So yeah, I think the biggest thing was, and there's two dramatically different purposes to these emails, right? Because FIT's not asking for money yet, and First is. So First has to tamper down in-season expectations, in-person expectations, because they need to know, hey, if you give us this $2,000, you may not play. Where FIT is saying, we're doing everything we can to be ready to play, but it has nothing to do with the money, right? Because each event would still cost more based on something in here. I don't remember where that post was. Some sentence in here says in-person events would have another registration fee.
Yeah, and they don't even name the other fee. They're like, we will charge you more money later.
Yes, correct.
Well, I also thought that First in Texas, I got the impression they're committed to holding in-person events. In other words, they're going to push for that. So, but it's got to, first HQ's got to say everything's okay. Otherwise it doesn't happen.
Yeah, and I think that makes the most sense, right? Because they need to be prepping. Because the thing you don't want to get in a situation in is that they don't want to have in-person events, or they're not planning for it, and then First 8Q says you guys should have in-person events, and it's February, and then they're scrambling. It's much easier to have the plans in place, be thinking about all of the contingencies. Right, the worst case you lose some deposits or whatever, and even that you can probably get around if you cancel early enough and things, right? So I think it makes sense for them to be planning. But with just no assumption of in-person events.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a couple of things too that, I mean, obviously a lot of things need to be fleshed out yet, but there's a couple of big areas of potential, I don't know, conflict or whatever that I see where if you decide to go to an in-person event, are you not allowed to do like the skills challenge part? Because if there's judged awards at both, or is the in-person event, is that not going to have any judge there because everything does it remotely?
It seems really hard to have in-person judging to me. Like, just if
yeah,
they're not
so,
having stands, I don't see how they have that many extra people for judging and things.
I guess maybe what I'm saying is that if they do the remote judging for the teams at the event, but then how does that happen for the skills challenge? Because I think what I had read before, right, is that if there are, or heard or something, that if there are in-person events, it's remote, maybe even reffing, remote judging, remote scouting. And so I guess, I don't know, it seems, I don't know how they handle the awards part. If some areas have in-person events, some teams aren't allowed to go to their like zoned in-person events or whatever that would be. So there's definitely, I think, some things to figure out with all of that still.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I think almost everything is up in the air still, right? Like, there's so much uncertainty that we just don't know yet.
You also have the teams that couldn't even get access to their robots, so they're not even doing the skills challenge, and they're gonna have, the only thing left to that they can do is the game design challenge or the innovation challenge.
Well, the blog specifically called out a no robot skills challenge part where you're submitting some kind of advanced like engineering notebook or something else, pictures or videos from times.
For the robot-based awards, you'd be able to participate without access to the robot. I think for the skills challenge, you would need the robot, but I don't know. But I think those are separate things in the way I read it, right? There's two different bullets. So you have like the team show off what their robot and drivers can do in the skills challenge, and those are for the skills challenge awards. Then there's a separate judging component for the traditional robot-based awards, and teams can participate with or without access to the robot for that. Does that make sense? So like,
so you still may be able to do like
industrial design.
Yeah, so this is creativity. Yeah, all of those. And you would just do that through a presentation to the judges, which is what you normally do anyway. Plus they have like match observers, so they just wanted to have the match observers, which, some events they don't really listen to the match observers anyway, because we've all seen awards that make no real sense based on what happens on the field. And we're just like, wait, what? Oh, they saw it in the pit and it worked great there. And you're like, okay, that's fine. They deserve the award. They did well, but it made no sense based on what happened on the field.
It's going to be very interesting to see how the various school systems versus cities versus counties versus state versus First in Texas versus, global first, all layers up, and how all of the various, rules specific to each locale end up kind of meshing through all of this.
Right. And I mean, my guess, if we were to point right now, is to say that some areas, someone will probably play Infinite Recharge sometime in 2021. Where that is playing, how many teams are playing, and at what point in 2021, I have no idea. But to say that no one is playing at all in 2021 seems like a stretch. Like, that's a long time. But
also in the really weird territory of the rules do allow for a robot to be driven by students from another team.
Correct.
So we could theoretically be in a world where if Dallas is under control, we like mail all of our robots to Dallas and then convince students in Dallas to drive all of them. And then it becomes a showcase of like all of the Texas robots driven by the same 16 students that are just learning how to do
remote driving.
I feel like that one doesn't happen, Josh, but I mean,
It's-
the
it's allowed.
rules could allow for it, but seems very difficult.
Yeah,
and I'm
it's
definitely not just shipping my robot to anyone. Like,
almost certainly
that's
not worth
definitely
it.
not happening.
Guys, could y'all let me know from y'all's perspective of what you're hearing from your schools about even being able to, like, first competition would come across like a field trip. I mean, I'm kind of comparing it to that. Are schools even brought that up, would consider that, going to a non-school event or outside the school event? And, is that even being allowed, talked about, or whatever? I'd like to hear some feedback on that.
For us, if we wanted to go like next weekend, my schools would be like, "What are you doing? That's laughable." If I told them, "Hey, we might be going somewhere in March," they're probably open to it. But at any point before then, they could say no. But I don't think it's a hard no for like the entire school year or anything yet.
Yeah, I think
we're
that would be
similar.
the same for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So y'all are basically on the same roller coaster as we are. The only one that knows any of this is the COVID virus, Y'all are having to go through the same type of scenarios, just like we are with trying to plan some type of event. You can plan for 50 of them, and hopefully one of the 50 scenarios you have would work. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think in general, I mean, there of all the different extracurriculars, I assume we're fairly low on the totem pole of getting things figured out. Band and football are always way up top, and then I don't know what's going to be next. So,
Yeah.
There is something weird about the way our school district is handling things. Is like band and football are in a different class of activities, but as far as students being in a classroom for teaching purposes, the top priority there is STEM. And so because we have a class now, we get access to campus in wave 2. So like football and band are already doing stuff. And then like as soon as they expand on that, we have access for class reasons, but it's unclear how that extends to like after school meetings or anything else. And the date where wave 2 is supposed to happen keeps getting pushed back nebulously. So there's nothing we can count on.
I also make an educated guess that if we do have any in-person events, you may be locked to your home area. So Austin, not traveling to Del Rio, etc. You're probably going to be, if you're going to compete, you're sticking to your home area just for that level of geographic containment. Wild guess.
There's only so much you can do of that though, right? Because there are teams who have to travel some amount because
Right.
that some amount in Texas is 6 hours. So, like,
all of the head
Teams in
referees
Waco
live in
are not.
Austin, and all of the FTAs live in Dallas. And I think most of the LRIs live in Houston. So if you want to run an FRC event, you end up like mixing all of
we do a little bit with there's slightly, we're getting slightly better in some of those areas. We're working on it.
See, that should be the game challenge. And if you're doing one for first, tell them, you could call it the Texas game or whatever and say, oh, here's how we're spread out with volunteers, and design the challenge for that.
Does remote LRIing an event seem at all feasible?
So it depends on how they establish the rules, right? So like remote inspection isn't so bad. Like I've done remote inspections before, where I've looked through robots.
Remote inspection is one thing. Yeah.
It just depends on what your rules are for a bunch of other stuff. And honestly, but we can also just be a lot more lax with inspection, right? Because it's not like no one inspects at all at off seasons. So and everything's fine. So at some point you make sure they've gone through an inspection, and then whoever is the volunteers who are on site can have some amount of power to be like, well, that's super illegal, don't do that, which is what we do at all the off seasons, right? Like someone like the refs and everybody else can just be like, that clearly just why are you doing? Like, and anything else you're probably okay on.
Well, then how about remote reffing?
Yeah,
I don't think that's going to work for FRC. Like, I guess we do
doing
have,
anything real time is going to suck.
we have a lot more like expensive webcasting equipment on hand for FRC.
Yeah.
But there's also like a whole bunch of reffing is real-time communication, and like you wouldn't come to a question box to join a Zoom call, right? That just doesn't make any sense. You can't run an event that way.
I think part of it also is like there's going to be volunteers at the event. The important part is what do those volunteers do and how do you like have them cross-trained to do all the tasks that need to get done, right? We've done this before at small off seasons where we've run off seasons with a very small crew where yeah, you have refs, but before that they're helping set up the field and sometimes they may have to help with field reset and like all of these things, right? Like you can multitask, but the priority people can be there, right? Maybe you have an LRI who also is the FTAA because they can do both those jobs, that type of thing. Like it doesn't make sense to like make sure you have no refs, but then you still have field reset. Like why would that would make no sense.
I think the problem with reffing will be the point of view of the cameras. So unless you had cameras all the way around and the refs could watch all the cameras, then things could occur just in the wrong place at the wrong time, which is to some degree the way reffing is anyway, but it'd be
I was going to say
worse.
that's par for the course.
And you would almost have to include instant replay of every event where the refs can be watching video to go back and forth for anything.
You would only need to add 2 cameras to the normal webcast setup to match like the field of view of the humans standing at the ref tablets. Except without the ability to like turn your head, there becomes like fixed blind spots that are super obvious, and all the teams will learn where the blind spots are immediately.
Yeah, it's also a max of 5 people you're taking out, so like it's not useful to worry about virtual refs. Like it just doesn't need to happen.
And they can totally social distance.
Right.
I mean, they're like spread across the field, separate.
Yeah. The ones where it gets harder, it's like the entire judges panel having to go into every pit. Like that's a lot trickier, right? They're contacting way more people than the refs need to. The refs seem like the lowest priority to make virtual compared to many of the other volunteer roles.
I guess maybe I don't know, maybe this isn't going to be a popular take, but I also don't think that it's realistic to try to make, or I don't know, there's going to be a lot of things if we are even able to do in-person events this year that it's just like, it's not going to be, we can't make it comparable. Like it's going to be at best an off season. And I think we've all been to plenty of good off seasons, and like whatever we get this year may not even be as good as a good off season. So I don't know.
Is why I'm still interested and excited for whatever they announce for the skills challenges, because at the end of the day, like the whole point of the competition is to justify the existence of the build season. And if we can figure out how to hold a build season safely, all we need is like a reason to hold a build season. And it doesn't need to be a whole competition. That'd be super cool, but we can do something else.
Yeah, and I don't know how they're going to do skills challenge with like teams that don't have areas to do any sort of practice. So it has to be, I don't know if there's like different levels of skills challenge where like all you have is a goal, all you have is tape on a wall. Like, I don't know what they're going to do. Right?
Yeah, there's got to be something.
Because you go from teams that have a full field down to teams who have a classroom and can't build anything because they have no space to store it. So yeah, I assume there'll be maybe levels or some other way to score it or something.
Yeah, the way Best Robotics is handling that this year is kind of a skills challenge, but every team got a build kit for the field elements that they could practice on, and then that's how they would get judged. There is no plan at Best Robotics that I'm aware of to have an actual event. The best they're going to have is the skills challenge where a referee watches you take 3 or 4 runs, and then that determines how you did at your hub levels.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's not bad.
And especially since Best is in the fall, they have to do that because they're in a much bigger time crunch than FRC is.
Yeah.
And that does, we didn't mention it in my summary, but a week prior to this, they had made the announcement that the World Championship event would be pushed back until July for the South and possibly early August for Detroit. So that was also a little odd because they went from, hey, we're pushing back world champs to don't plan on having in-person events in a week time. But again, I think that was mostly for the registration information and just like teams realizing why they are registering.
Is anyone thinking about local scrimmages? Is that on anyone's radar? Or?
Yeah, that's something that we had talked about, was having, like, inviting 3 teams to our place and then just having, you know, kind of like a practice day, like when we would go down to NASA or something, except a little bit more structured so that you were actually doing kind of a, you know, rotating around and competing with different people and keeping track of scores and things like that. So it's a little bit more organized, but it would only involve a handful of teams at a time.
And probably only a handful of people per team.
Exactly. Like a drive team, you know, drive team with human players and stuff like that.
Is it at all feasible for a setup like that to be used for the skills challenges? Because some teams have their, you know, wooden mock-ups that are, you know, fairly basic or maybe not have all functions.
Yeah, I mean, I think all that stuff is going to end up coming down to the school district's decisions on where they think they fall with liability, right? Like, I know I would love to be able to open up our place for skills challenge stuff if we have the teachers that can support it or whatever, but I don't know. It might be that even come March time, maybe the school district doesn't really want other people coming into the buildings or something like that, no matter how we try to manage it. But Houston, I know we've probably talked about this before. Houston's unique just because there's so many fields here, but yeah.
Yeah, we had, we were expecting some people from Galena Park. I guess that's Goose Creek ISD. No, not Galena Park. Anyway, Goose Creek ISD was going to come wherever Blarglefish are from. And so they were going to come and look at our facility. The week before, they were going to go to Katy, and then that got canceled all of a sudden. And then they were going to come to our facility, and then that got canceled. And it was because there was an incident at one of the schools in our district where a visitor came onto campus, and I guess they were waiting on test results. And so it's kind of like no unnecessary visitors allowed on campus. So I wasn't even sure if I was going to be allowed because I no longer work for the district or anything, but I've made enough friends that they let me come up anyway.
So something I'm kind of interested to hear from others is like, I don't know, we don't necessarily need to talk about the value of the registration for $2,000 and what we're doing, but are people looking at doing something else either in addition to or in place of, like with just their team? And what kind of things are, I don't know, are any of those types of things firming up for people and ideas?
So I can share, because we are actually starting. We had a meeting this past Thursday. We were all outdoors, and we've had a big personal protective equipment kind of outreach going on. And so that's what we did on Thursday, was we built hands-free sanitizer stations for teachers on campus, and one of the FTC teams did it, or some of the FTC teams did it. And then we're starting not tomorrow, but the following Tuesday with the first meeting where we're actually having students in the robotics lab again. And most of you probably may not know our situation because we now have another team sharing the facility. And so they have Mondays and Wednesdays, and we have Tuesdays and Fridays. And so we're going to be meeting on Tuesdays and Fridays from like 3 to 5:30. And we have some projects, which not only the PPE things, but we've been working on improvements to last year's robots, so we're more competitive. And then we've been working on, the kids were calling it Super Pit, but basically it's just an upgrade to our workbench, and then upgrade to some of the stuff that we have in our pit setup. And that's things that we've got CAD groups working on and stuff. So in fact, I've got a meeting tomorrow at 6 with the Pro Pit group to look over CAD that they've been working on.
So Scott, with your team too, because you're another big team that is Texas Torque comprised of students from multiple schools, right?
Most of the students are from the College Park High School campus.
Okay.
So, and there's a school within a school there. It's called the Academy of Science and Technology, which is where I used to teach. And so I'd say over half of our students come from the academy, and then probably 40% come from College Park. We have a few from the Woodlands High School. We have one from Grand Oaks High School. We have one from Conroe High School. And right now, nobody from Oak Ridge and nobody from Caney Creek that I'm aware of.
So are y'all trying to do anything where your in-person meetings, you're trying to like make sure that only the same students come in together or anything, or only people from the academy or only people from College Park, so you're not like potentially, I don't know, cross-contaminating between the schools? I know that's one of the things that I've had in the back of my head of how much do we need to worry about that?
So we have protocols for when the people get there. They have to, there's a QR code, and they have to fill out a little survey that says, have they, all the standard COVID questions that you get asked. And so they answer a few of those. And beside that, we don't have anything. There's no guidance that says these people from the other campuses can't come to the meetings. And now those meetings are after school. They're not during the school day. So, but that didn't come up about cross-contamination between campuses.
Is that anything any other teams on here have like thought about or been concerned with or done anything for?
So we haven't done anything yet because we're still all virtual, but yeah, we have the 2 schools, and that is one of the reasons why we're staying completely virtual. So several of the, like most of the sports, even ones who aren't like in season, are still they're able to do practice and workouts and things. But they're mostly keeping it to the individual schools. So we haven't started coming back because we haven't figured out how we'd be able to have students from both schools and the timing and everything else. And we haven't needed to. We've been keeping busy with training and handling the Zoom stuff pretty well. But eventually this semester we'll probably do some amount of in-person that we'll have to work with the schools to make sure that we can keep the cohort small enough. Because I think they have some students who switch back and forth because they have classes, but only some of them do in-person at both. So I'm not entirely sure how it works, but I know there is some amount of crossing back and forth already. So we'll get guidance from both administrations once we start heading in that direction for some amount of in-person training days and things on weekends and stuff.
Right now for us, Andrew, we don't have the choice because our district isn't allowing anyone that's not from that school to come to the school. So it's a no-go for us. Anyone from our high school is allowed in, but no adults and no students from other schools are allowed in. So the choice is being made for us.
But that's also going to make it more difficult to find venues for holding in-person events.
It is.
So at least in Austin, I guess we're in a unique position of not being beholden to a school. And we do have enough space to put a field up. But then whether or not people would actually be interested in coming out or or if they're school sponsored, whether or not they'd be able to get permission through that is a different story. And I think right now we're still beholden to the Austin City guidance, which is 10 or less people and, limiting where possible. So,
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the latest state rules would actually say events are wide open, no problem. But when you get into state versus city, then it's fun that I don't want to put a lawyer hat on for.
yeah, we just follow whatever's most restrictive.
Right.
Up here this morning, our county just decided that we no longer needed a disaster declaration. So, everything's kind of, all the walls are coming down up here. Yeah, so fun times.
This is Leisha. I have a different question. I'm sure some of you all on the call are supported by sponsors, and your funding comes from sponsors in your school or whatever y'all do as fundraisers. Those that do have outside sponsors, how are y'all keeping them engaged, or the communication going on with them as far as, we may have a virtual season, we may have in person, whatever?
We submitted a team picture, which was a screenshot of all the students on Zoom. One of which has the robot in his garage. So he had like the selfie cam up with the robot behind him. And it was like, yeah, this is our team right now. We're doing our best.
That's probably not a bad thing, because you're showing you're being responsible. Like, if you're all kind of, shoulder to shoulder, yucking it up in the picture and live, and this wasn't from last year, then it's like, why should I give money to you guys? Will you still be alive to use it?
We're kind of fortunate in that we're still, a lot of our individual dollars come in through our virtual telethon that we held every year. And so thankfully, even though we're meeting virtually, we're still able to hold our virtual telethon. So we're going to be able to use that just to highlight that we've remained active and still are able to put on this event. And of course, it's going to have a different look and feel, but we're hoping that our sponsors will be pleased with that.
And we actually did the same thing Josh mentioned as well. As a thank you to one of the sponsors, we had all the students write, thank you sponsor, and sign their name and stuff. And then it was a Zoom screenshot, just like you said. So yeah, very similar to what you guys did, Josh.
We haven't put a whole lot of, thought or effort into that. We have tried to do a couple social media posts, and we've got some students talking about putting together a video, but I've yet to see a whole lot of progress made on that video. So that's kind of where we're at the moment.
Motivation's been hard to come by on our end too. We're dragging. We will be dragging this telethon across the finish line.
Yeah, but whatever you can do to make sure your sponsors know, hey, you're still alive, you're still active, you're still doing STEM. You may not have a competition at the end of it, but there's still lots of opportunities to learn. So we still need money.
Yeah, we're lucky that our big sponsor is Halliburton, and even though they've been going through some rough times.
Very rough times.
Yeah, the guy that's been getting the money for us basically is also a technical mentor for the team, and so we've actually been more secure financially for the last couple of years than we have previous to that because of the role he's playing. Has helped out a lot. Now, Anadarko was purchased by Occidental. I think that was the company, and that sponsorship's gone. So we haven't been able to replace that, but we have more money coming in from Halliburton that makes up for it.
Have any of you guys been trying to take advantage of some of the opportunities that COVID has kind of presented? I mean, a lot of companies are going out of business, kind of a lot of equipment out there. I mean, it's a little bit dark to kind of frame it that way, but
yeah, that's an interesting idea. We haven't done that. I know David was saying they have someone on their team that is a serial Craigslist deal finder, which is an all right idea, I guess. If you want to pick up a bajillion used drill presses.
Yeah, I was doing more auction searching at the beginning of the pandemic, looking for other stuff, but then doing that it stopped being worth my time as I spent way more time doing virtual training and prepping all the stuff for the students and what we can do now, than like reading all of the amount of municipal and closeout auctions and things on the websites, because it takes a lot of work to search through them and find anything reasonable.
I think the real question is or actually, I think the real question that I would love to get you guys' thoughts on is when we try to look into the crystal ball and roll things forward, say 2 or 3 years, do we see a return to, kind of similar FRC activities, or?
I do. I think most things are going to get semi-similar, even back as fast as 2022. Assuming that the world is better and there's a vaccine at some point in the next, that's year and 3 months, and things start getting more regular. We would hope we get something, the schools get more normal. That's at least how I'm choosing to believe it's going to happen.
I mean, it may never step outside without a mask again, but hopefully there'll be something that looks closer to normalcy than right now.
So, I mean, I guess the big events, it would be hard to justify, doing any of the kind of like shopping if you didn't think that it could get back there. I don't know.
Like,
I mean, there's still lots of learning opportunities though, right? So
right, but like I don't know. Like I feel like eventually it's going to, right? Like, I mean, the plague happened a long time ago too, so it's a matter of time, right? It's just how long until it happens. I don't think anyone knows exactly how long, but we're clearly got through the flu in 1918 and all the other pandemics that have happened in the past.
that's a good way to think about it.
And I do think we'll eventually, I think at some point we will be able to not wear masks every day. I do think we will start wearing masks more often. I think flus will be easier to handle because more people will wear masks when they're sick, when they have the flu, which is great. Like, it's now reasonable to do it. People will understand why people are doing it. It just like they have in other countries for a while, right? And I think other countries got to be very normal after having slightly more pandemic level things than we've ever experienced. This is just the first one that we've experienced, but parts of Asia have had bird flu and other SARS, other ones right? They've had other issues where they've had masks before, they've had these things, and they've gotten back to normal relatively quickly. It's not a forever thing.
Yeah, I was going to say I got my flu shot a couple of days ago, and then I think it was the very next day they were talking about how this past spring the flu numbers were much better than they've seen in a long time, and they attributed it to the lockdown for the pandemic. That it also, had a similar effect on flu cases.
Mhm.
So there were a lot fewer flu cases once the lockdown happened.
Yeah, the southern hemisphere has, they get the flu season before we do, and it was pretty much non-existent. I think the biggest question, because I agree, I don't think it's going to be as bad here, but I think the biggest question is the complacency that comes in. So spring was the heart of the lockdown, so everyone was incredibly careful. So it just depends on, complacency.
Well, there are still some people that don't believe there's a problem.
Sorry, I was muted. You all didn't hear my giant laugh.
No, this is very true, and we're not. I don't think our flu numbers are going to be as good as like Australia, New Zealand's were, where they took it far more seriously. They were able to. They're also islands, right? They're able to keep it contained, less travel between places. But it will be lower, hopefully, which is good. But yeah, eventually, whether it's 2022 or 2023, whatever it is, we'll have semi-normal things. Whether how many teams come back and what we're doing to recruit them back and try to keep them going, whatever, we may have different events, different event sizes. Like things will change because it's like things change anyway, right? It's not like things have always been the same. FRC is dramatically different in the last 5 years in Texas, right? Where it doesn't look anything nor close to what it looked like 5 years ago. But I think we'll be back to something where it's exciting and we're inspiring the kids.
Plug for Alan's FRC history recap video. That was a lot of fun.
I do have a whole thing.
Yeah. You should watch it.
I'll take this discussion a whole different direction. Maybe we'll be planning things even differently depending on how, after November the 3rd, whoever gets elected, we could all be in total lockdown and have to really, depending on if we ever they get their politics worked out. So.
Oh,
that's a big if.
Yeah.
I put the
overview.
So.
That could be a game. How to get politicians to get along and get things done.
The overview of FRC games is linked in chat if people want to look at it. It kind of groups all the beginning ones because I wasn't around for a bunch of the first decade, but then it gets more into each one as it gets closer to modern FRC. But yeah, in general, I've been doing a lot of training with the kids that have been intentionally made to be short-ish YouTube videos as well. So building up a library of training stuff that everyone is free to use. There's a whole playlist on the Spectrum channel, and they have semi-coded by curriculum stuff that will slowly get fleshed fully out. But basically, like 3 to 4 videos a week go up, roughly an hour long each. This is the full one. Like we talked about FRC programming and like the simulation. This walks through the full like training course for like brand new kids on it. Is what I did today with them.
Holy smokes, that's an incredible pace.
No, it's because I was able to make it. I was able to make that the fast one, right? So like I gave them the full example. So it's a single file that we're walking through. So like I wrote a very basic robot code that's a single file. That's all we're walking through. And so then they have this, right? So they're not writing it from scratch. They have this.
No. I meant the pace that you're producing videos at.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Because that's what I'm doing them every day. I'm not like doing any editing, right? I do it live with the kids. It takes about an hour. I upload it right
Gotcha.
after. It is what it is.
Gotcha.
But that allows me to get out videos very quickly, and the kids can watch them if they miss it. That's the main reason, is they can watch it, but it helps that everyone else can see it too, because why not make it public?
Yeah, the students on our team are doing like a similar version of this. Like they're holding Zoom meetings for design trading for incoming students. and they've talked about recording it to make it available for other people to watch down the road, but they're not as good at presenting as you are. And so I'm kind of like, do you really want this recorded? Like, I don't know that you're going to look back on this fondly.
I mean, putting it out there, I don't know, does anyone else look back at it? But you're going to be your hardest critic anyway. So, like, it's not like anyone else would be like, oh, you tried to help people? What was that about? Like, no one's
That's
mad
fair.
at you for releasing training content. So,
Yeah.
like, publishing is just publishing, and you get better at it by doing it, right? It's not like I was good at public speaking and, like, presenting. I was terrible at it. I still am not good. I'm learning. Like, you know, the amount of effort it takes me not to say, like, okay at the beginning every time I hit record from that comment, Josh, is immense. Every single time I hit the record button, and then I think in my brain, I'm like, don't say it, don't say it. And then sometimes I still say it.
It's part of the brand. That's fine.
Alan, are there any thoughts? Believe it or not, we actually had some. How many we'll get from the Houston area, I don't know, but people that want to take the plunge on being a rookie for 2020. I mean, a real brand, not a holdover rookie from 2020, but a rookie for 2021. Any thoughts that you could, or on this, host something to, like a tutorial or something, a virtual workshop?
Yeah, absolutely. No, yeah, we could totally do that. There's myself, and I'm volunteering many of the people who are on the call right now. We'll be happy to do it.
Well, I think it's two types of training. I think it's and give me feedback on this. So we have rookie teams, 2020 teams that are literally rookies because they were never able to compete in 2020. So you know, were they at a different level or something? Would it be a different training or something for them versus someone that's just brand new for 2021?
It depends. For most of them, probably not, because most of the rookies didn't know a ton anyway, and you learn so much at the event that they didn't get to learn. That we
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so much like that you learn the second time you hear it. Like, it's just from the fire hose that first time. So hearing the same stuff a second time is only going to benefit them.
And a lot of them never heard it anyway, right? A lot of them were just figuring it out or trying to, and reading random things from the internet and just trying to get going.
Yeah,
and then a lot of it, we kind of get them direction at the event when we finally can get them somewhere, and they kind of see, oh, this is what we're supposed to be doing. Because so many of them just don't know the level at which they're supposed to be playing, right? You get a kit of parts, you watch some videos, but you don't really know how this works until you're
Right.
there.
Unless they were founded or supported by alumni mentors, it
Correct.
seems pretty unlikely that.
Right. And then
Yeah, and I would think that it would be, you know, is the training in two different phases. Like, okay, here's what happens at a normal event. Should we be able to have in-person events? And then here's what all this virtual things that they're talking about. You know, that's a different type of training, right? And wouldn't it be two different type of things?
I mean, if depending on what they want to learn, there is weeks, months, 20 years of training, depending on what you want to do for FRC, right? It's not like the subject matter stops. So how much we want to get through and kind of what the goal is, I think that's where it depends. And we can do it in a whole bunch of different ways, right?
Well, I mean, like, one of the challenges is, okay, design a game and present it as one of the challenges. And these guys are going to go talk about drinking from the fire hose, you know.
Oh yeah, like honestly, they just shouldn't. Like, I mean, they can, but it depends on how first puts the rules out, I guess, and what they're looking for in judging. Because maybe that's really a creative thing. You get somebody with a fresh perspective. They don't have these other past games to kind of lock them into a box. They might be really good at it. But I don't know what they expect. We haven't seen any of the rules or how they want submitted or what you're supposed to, right? Like, is it just like, do sketches work, or do you need to have a full CAD model of a field? I don't know.
Yeah.
Is that something that, because I'll talk with the other powers to be within First in Texas, is that something that they come to? There's folks here from different areas on your mentor talk thing. Is it one training statewide that one would do, or is it by region? You know, like depending. Listen, if there's 10 rookies in the whole state, it's a no-brainer. If there's multiple more rookies in the state compiled from both 2020 and 2021, you know, like having 30 people or 20 people or whatever on it might be a bit much, you know.
It might, but honestly, I don't know if one, you're not going to get all 30 of them on at the same time, which is not going to happen. So having multiple sessions is probably fine, but we can do multiple sessions without region locking it, right? Like I can do, I would happily do a Monday night and a Saturday afternoon or whatever we want to do, and make it have different times for different people, because you're never going to get everyone at the same time. It just doesn't.
Right. Okay.
It would be beneficial to make sure that there is someone in their region for them to meet on the call.
Yep.
But not necessarily like the presenter. Like I can totally learn robots from Alan from Austin, which is fine. Although,
I was going to say the same thing, because I think it's really important that they know who can they go to locally when they need help with something. That's such a big part of like making a good rookie year.
I'm gonna add the story because I haven't gotten a chance to tell it yet. But I was at Dripping Springs and Channelview before, like pre-lockdown, and in Dripping Springs, way more of the robots fit under the color wheel, and in Channelview, a whole bunch of the robots didn't. Like, just on average, there were a lot more tall robots, and one of the few tall robots at Dripping Springs was Spectrum, and like most of the other Dripping Springs robots are Austin robots, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, Houston robots are taller, Austin robots are shorter. And Westwood made a tall robot because we follow the Open Alliance blog. So we were like copying off of Alan's notes. So we built a Houston robot in Austin because we weren't talking to enough of the Austin teams to get like the Austin mind share.
That's an interesting, I had not thought about that. I didn't see Channelview, so I didn't, interesting. I need to look back at Channelview matches apparently.
Yeah, so there's something to be said for like, there are regions that have identities even within like this community, just based on who knows who and who's thinking about what.
I don't think I like convinced that many teams to go tall though. Like not like intentionally. Like I mean, like they may have been seeing it because we post everything, but like I didn't like as many times as I wanted to. I had the argument. I tried. Most of them stayed short, but like,
see what happens when you win Woody Flowers?
Like, people were thinking we were crazy for half the season. They were like, "Why are you building tall? What is this?"
That does all highlight on the training aspect. We always structure ourselves as we're an engineering company, and every January we get a whole new set of design goals and instructions. We have 6 weeks to build something that meets these criteria and is competitive. So taking that business aspect, by the time we get done with this school year, possibly next school year, you can think of it as your contract has expired and all your current employees are gone, and you're bringing in completely fresh meat who now have never ever been to an event. So if you're not doing much in terms of, making sure all your plans and why you tried something and it didn't work, documenting all that, focusing on that, as well as just talk on your seniors, the experience of what to expect at an event, and here are good do's and don'ts, and here's the rules, and here's going above and beyond the rules, full GP, all that. Trying to get some of that stuff documented from your students and their words to pass down is also something to probably think about here.
And then, kind of at least for me, the events were always the way that you sparked the fire in students. Like, you go to an event and you watch, that gorgeous Spectrum powder-coated robot just trounce the field, right? And that is inspiring. They all want to be that awesome robot. They want to design like the awesome robots, or the Texas Torque robot, or I can't remember any of the rest of the names, but you know what I mean. Yeah, I know I'm a terrible FRC mentor.
Don't forget that, the black and orange background.
I know. It's terrible. Anyways,
we've got Paradox. We've got tons of teams on here.
Yeah, exactly. So, but the point is like, you know, you go, you see those awesome robots, and the students want to get there, right? And it's going to be hard to continue to try to get students excited without that that experience of a regional event or of a district event to kind of, you know, be the football game where you go, oh yeah, I get it, this is awesome. You know what I mean?
It's
agree
like
100%.
it's like when you get stomped by 118, it's still a really awesome experience because you got to see them up
Oh
close.
yeah, exactly.
So yeah, so I think
some
part
of us can stomp 118 back also. There have been people that have won against the 118.
So part of that I think is also just making sure, like I try to do a lot in our Slack and stuff to to show a bunch of other robots and to get the kids excited about the competition culture, even though we don't know when we'll be able to compete again. Like we'll post reveal videos from the past and show them what the other robots look like. We've had discussions. We haven't done it yet, but we're trying to work out exactly how. But we're trying to figure out how to do basically almost like relive an event. Whether we haven't decided if we're going to do our own team or if we pick a different team to like be. But we would basically like go through and watch all the matches from like that team, kind of play out how alliance selection went through, watch some of the actual events, so just so we can kind of like watch the flow of how an event works and discuss it with the kids. We haven't figured out exactly how to do it yet, but it's been a topic that we've bounced back and forth.
Fantasy FRC?
Kind of, because you can't change things, right? So you can't like write your own story because it's like it happened, these alliances got built. So you kind of just have to like walk through and be like, okay, we're at this point. Why? Let's try to backtrack and feel like why they made this pick, or if we were this team, why did this happen, and would we done something different?
Well, so
there
is a baseball statistics game like that. Like I have to talk to my friend about it, but basically you play teams from other years. You can build whatever you can build up teams if you want, but then it comes down to random chance still. And so, you know, you kind of roll the die and you see what happens. And if it's Sandy Koufax, there's a better chance that he'll strike out a lefty versus a righty or something like that. And so a friend of mine, actually probably my best friend, he's won like a national award for this thing, but it's very rigorous, the stats, because baseball is a stat heavy sport, and so that's why they're able to do this that way. So you could probably do something kind of like that with FRC and kind of how robots did a previous year, you know, in a certain season, and then use those statistics. And just because a certain robot, I'm just going to use 2013 because the only reason we advanced was because Symbotics kept trying to do the same thing in our finals matches. Semifinal match, yeah. That they kept trying to do the same thing over and over. That could have gone the other way.
Yeah.
And it'd been a totally different story for us and for them and for 118 and stuff. So so that'd be kind of interesting to, you know, it'd be kind of like using OPR, but you got to have a random factor in there so that, you know, you can watch matches, and then when the score comes up, well, the score may not, you know, 2013 was a good year for the score goes up and what?
Especially for you guys, but
You're outscoring that full court shooter. Yeah.
Well, they had.
Well, they were scoring by weight at one point.
Yeah, that was a different problem, but even by hand on Einstein. But but yeah, so what our point is, we're trying to do this for also like relatively brand new kids. They've never been to an event. They don't need to do other things. We just need to be able to. They need a point to see matches and have someone explain what's happening and kind of explain the decision process to kind of give them some experience of going to an event without being able to go to an event. So like they see kind of what we'd be doing during those types of things, what we're discussing, what we're looking at, that type of stuff. Because that's where things get, for us at least, win or loss, right? Like where you go, what you're doing at the event outside of that stuff doesn't actually change the outcome of the event very much.
We're going to do a similar thing, but not quite like that. But we have some updates to some scouting software. So we're going to have a virtual scouting party. And I was just talking, my husband's a mentor too. And we were going to use another area, another district that's not Texas. And also, you know, have them watch matches that aren't robots they would know. Like, oh, I totally know how Graybot did or Jack and the Bot did. And basically he was going to have them scout like 3 or 4 matches and then do an alliance picking. So that the whole thing is they could scout a couple of matches, do an alliance picking based on what they saw, and then see how they actually did. And thought the kids would like that, especially, you know, for some of the games they've already seen. So it's kind of fun. And you're watching robots you hadn't paid attention to for that season. So there's a little bit of, you know, first time newness to it. And it's kind of exciting because it's a little fantasy element, right? It's a little bit of a fantasy robotic situation.
That makes sense. That's cool.
That actually sounds like a really great idea because, you know, they can go and analyze the various capabilities, which I think a lot of teams kind of pick the wrong roles. I know, you know, the previous year you know, with Duchesne, they just picked the wrong role and built a decent robot for the wrong role. And, you know, analyzing the game is so important.
Any, on a different subject involving the students, any thoughts from the group on for seniors? So the 2020 graduating, was it 2020? Yeah, 2020 graduating seniors had no involvement, you know, if they were drivers or whatever, and they didn't get to experience that. Now come 2021, that could be the same case as well, if we do virtual events or whatever. Any thoughts? Did it really matter to the students, or something that we just in Texas could do special for them so it's at least somewhat memorable?
So I don't know if you have any influence over what the skills challenge thing is, but it would be nice if, like, if, say, as my team, say I've got like 15 seniors, I could put together 5 different drive teams or something like that, and they could all submit something for the skills challenge. I think that's what I've kind of been thinking about as like a way to potentially engage more of my most engaged students, because even if we do in-person events and if we're limited to some small number of students, I can try to have the students that can't go to the in-person events do something for the skills challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what my thought has been so far.
You know, I really, am I on? Yeah. I really like that because a lot of times we do kind of like driver tryouts in the past that's happened, and, you know, they keep track of how well everybody does. And I'm always looking for these intangible properties, but the idea that you could sort of like, okay, you know, you get a minute and a half running the robot, see how well you can score, and you can pull your own little team together of people to do this. And then it's sort of like you put something up there, and then other people are trying to knock that down and do better. And it's something you can do internal to your team, and people can, you know, work on. I mean, they more people get an opportunity to actually operate the robot, and they're competing just more against each other instead of you know, instead of going to an event. So they still get that kind of competitive aspect. I think we're going to try to do something along those lines. I like that a lot.
We only had 2 seniors last year.
So we had a pretty big group of seniors, and it absolutely did matter to them, right? They all care a ton, but the thing is also, I don't think trying to make it up for it doesn't really work. Like it sucked that it happened, and I think we all know that. But also, a lot of things are annoying and are unpleasant over the last 9 months, whatever it's been, 6 months. And so I don't know if we can just like, it's not something we can just like hold an event and have them drive in an off season in 2022 and somehow make that, it doesn't make up for it, right? Like, I don't think that's how that works at all. So I hope that teams did do stuff to celebrate their seniors as much as they could. Like, we had a little Zoom party and things, and we tried to. It's not as nice as it normally is when we can do a banquet in person, but we did what we could, and I think that's part of it. But then also just, they got to have an experience before, and a lot of it isn't just like, just driving isn't the only thing that happens, right? Like, that's not the most important part of what we do on the team or anything. Driving at the events is fun and useful, but only a couple of them get to do it every year anyway. So I don't think it's just making up for that. It's the, like I was talking to Lucia earlier, and it's just more, how do we make sure that teams in other areas don't work? Because if you have kids and they're still engaged at all and you're still working with them, you're still getting the biggest benefit of what FRC is, that they're getting to work with mentors and they're getting to work with people who are passionate about things. So trying to figure out how to make sure we keep the teams from folding and also being able to start other teams and get enough students still, right? If our whole student population goes down in future years, that's a much bigger hit to me than the couple student or the handful, whatever, hundreds of students who didn't get to finish their drive season as a senior. It's not pleasant, but it's also, they're still going to be okay.
There's a whole long thread on Chief Delphi relating to this, and somebody was talking about how in their senior year, I guess they were in Louisiana and they got hit by Hurricane Katrina. So no, they didn't finish their school year. They finished their school year in a different state. So it's bad. And yeah, like Alan said, that guy didn't get to, you couldn't make up for it, because I think he was probably looking forward to going to graduation with his buddies, and they're now scattered all over. So I don't know how you make up for it. It probably isn't possible. And if you tried it, it'd come across as kind of a bait and switch.
So I think my perspective on a lot of this has been that for some of our students, at least, it's like, yeah, missing the senior season kind of sucks, but it almost is kind of independent of that. I think the thing that's been tougher for some of them is like a lot of problems that they were working to solve are just sitting there unresolved. Maybe like we had some team stuff with some of our students were trying to help improve team dynamics of different things. And like, maybe it's better, maybe it's not, they don't really know. They didn't get to see all their efforts kind of pay off. And so I don't know, I like, definitely some of my seniors have been really hardworking, and it sucks for them that like they couldn't finish their senior year. They're not going to be able to go back and do something else. But I agree with what Alan was saying, that it's not really like too much of a problem in some regards. But I think the difference for next year is that we are going in knowing what things we're working with. There's not going to be some unresolved thing from 2021, unless, I don't know, I guess something obviously could happen again, but it's going to be a little bit different this year.
I had that same observation. We only had one graduating senior, but we did have the advantage of going to a week one event. And there were 2 students on our team that had a family conflict, could not come, but they were like, yeah, we can't come to this one, but it's okay because we'll be able to go to the next one for sure. And then the next one never happened. So those 2 really felt it hard. It was that same thing of all that work. They didn't get the closure of being there, seeing the robot on the field and having that experience. So it was a lot harder for them than the rest of the team.
Obviously, this doesn't make up for like holding a competition, but one of the ideas that I've been kicking around to make virtual events seem more real is seeing if we can pull together footage of everyone doing their skills challenge or virtual matches or whatever, and cutting that into a live stream that kind of plays like a highlight reel of what the event would have been if all these robots were in the same place. It's like, oh, now we're going to go to such and such team, and then here's the team that first place innovation control. Look at their robot do PID. I don't know. And this is something, Brian, that I was going to bring up tomorrow. We have like a Central Texas FLL meeting tomorrow. I'm going to pitch this because like for FLL, we're receiving all these videos. It's like, can we cut this into a thing that the kids could watch? And it's like, this is something you're a part of. Like, this is your robot. This is all of the other robots. Like, there's a bunch of other people with these robots. It's not just you in your living room with a Lego robot and then a scoreboard somewhere. Like that, having a scoreboard is nice, and it justifies the work done on the robot to some extent, but it's like not exciting. You don't understand that you're a part of a thing when all you have is your robot and a scoreboard. But I think it'd be really great if hopefully FRC requires videos of their skill challenges. I don't know what they're thinking if they don't do that. Like FEC doesn't.
I think many of them
like,
should be like that. Like, given how the game is set up, you're still going to have the requirements of at least some type of a field, at least for distance and having a goal, but turn into something like NBA, how many shots from outside 20 feet in 30 seconds can you do? What's your total point score for outer goal versus inner goal? So things like that are easy to record and turn that in for judging. And you could do multiple passes and say, all right, here's our best run, and submit that. Things like that would be interesting for skills
I
challenges.
think kind of related to that, the FIRST is going to have their judging criteria, and we could have our own. Like I remember back in Rebound Rumble, somebody shot a basketball that went through the top hoop and the bottom hoop, and it's like, okay, that's probably not worth. I don't know if that's worth. I don't recall if that's worth anything in the game, but it was really cool to see. And the team my boys were on at the time, they only were able to get a basketball through the hoop twice in the whole season, but one time the thing bounced in auto mode. It went through and bounced on the floor and bounced back into the robot. And it's like, okay, submit videos of goofy stuff like that, and let's all have a good laugh about it.
Yeah, I think it would be worth the effort to like put some content on the Fit Twitch channel or whatever. Just to
this is the funniest robots.
Keep everyone engaged with, you're not the only ones doing this.
I think another aspect that you have to consider is that I always think about getting to go to the competition. That's always felt like it's been a reward to the students for all the good work that they've done. And so that's the big thing that or one of the things that they miss, is that they don't get to go to an event. And we were lucky, like Spectrum, that we went to a week 2 event, and so the kids got to compete, and so it wasn't as bad as if they'd never gotten to take the robot anywhere. So
Presumably the teams will have access, the teams that take part in the skills challenge will have access to the robot, and potentially something you can do is, okay, you all line up at 5 feet from the goal. Okay, take a shot. Everybody who gets it in, you now back up 2 feet. And then, okay, take a shot. Okay, everyone who got it in backs up another 2 feet. You keep going.
So
okay, who's king of the hill?
So partly, but like that's also a very that is a different game, and it all, no matter what, your games will be different. But they need to, and when they announce the rules, ideally they'll allow you to change your robot and stuff, because playing that game is very different than playing an FRC game, where a lot of times the best option is to design a robot that can shoot from a single spot, and you're just really good at getting to that spot.
Right.
Yeah, I understand. But this is sort of like Top Gear or whatever, where they go out, they each have $1,000, and they go buy a car for $1,000, and then they're given a bunch of challenges, and they presumably don't know what they are, and so potentially say, okay, guys, you got to do this.
Sure, they don't know what they are, except they help produce the show, but whatever.
Yeah, you want to build an FRC robot for $1,000 and not know what the game is?
Yeah, that's also that. I don't have a point. Okay. Other questions?
What would you build? that is an interesting thought
I mean,
experiment.
that is what
actually.
Well, no, like you're gonna go do something that's a variant of the game, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um,
The skills challenges hopefully will be sensible given the gameplay that we already are aware of, because some people played Infinite Recharge.
All right. We're running up on 8:30. Any other points of discussion?
any tips or anything on getting the teams engaged and up and running? Because like I'm looking at the team Discord, and there's like a burst of messages about once or twice a week, and it's like, hey guys, you might want to start doing something. Here's the latest announcement, and tweet.
Yeah,
Crickets.
if we were not doing FTC, our robotics Discord would be completely dead. Like that, all the engagement I've got is FTC students, and then the FRC students training the FTC students. There's no FRC happening on our team.
Is there anything that we can do from the First in Texas side to, is it motivating the team main and alternate team coaches, or I don't know, like here's some things you can do with your students, or
So I'll say on that note, and it's always hard to tell. I don't know how much of this is consistent, or if it's true for everybody, or just a couple of people speaking up. But I noticed a big dip in participation in the last couple of weeks once school started, and I've kind of started. I'm going to start calling them vibe check with the students, just because I don't know, that's what they do. But what I'm hearing is that their workload is way more than what they're used to, because I think everybody's trying to figure out the virtual stuff, and at least our district is saying that the online stuff is going to be just as strenuous as in person, and it sounds like it might be more so. And so just we haven't had a whole lot of participation, just because everybody I think is struggling with their own motivation for school and overloaded with school. So I don't know. That's been what I think is our experience.
I'll say that, from a sponsor side, because it was like, you really go into this downward spiral, like, oh, everything is, like my sponsors, for instance, you go into this downward spiral, oh, everything is canceled, and you have to, you need to inform your sponsors and everything. And then it's like, well, heck, we have to go ahead and figure out to communicate with them to keep them engaged. And, in calls that I had and other fit people have had that do any fundraising, it's like, we inform them, here's what's going on, and then we want to, follow up with you in a few weeks. And what I've had some one-on-one conversations with my sponsors is, get back to me, contact me in a month, 4 to 6 weeks out. And a lot of that is I'm now being asked to work from home, and I have all this extra stuff my boss wants me to do. And, these Zoom meetings, it's a whole technology thing and everything. So that may be, like what's going on with teachers too, it sounds like, from what you're saying, Andrew.
Does First need places to store fields?
Who's asking that?
That was Austin from Howdy Bots.
Oh,
Sorry, that was a little tongue in cheek, though.
Yeah, Austin.
So one of the things I've been able to do to keep engagement somewhat, and what I intentionally tried to do very early on, was to, as soon as we got into school and we got kind of into our we got our new students who have registered, but whether they're there or not, is be as regular as I can. So our Zooms happen at the same time every day for us, but it would be every week for most teams because I'm crazy. But so like 4 p.m. every day, if they come on the Zoom after school, we're there, we're doing something. And so that they know that they can just hop on if they want. It's optional, but we get pretty good engagement from most kids, and a lot of them will tell me if they can't come and when they can and can't. It's by no means perfect. Like there's some days where I'm just like, I don't know, what am I? I'm talking to 2 kids and it's empty space, but we still keep going so that the other times will happen as much as we can. And then I also just like try to throw out different things into the Slack so I can help start the conversations, right? Because I think part of it is like kids don't know what they should or shouldn't be talking about in Discord, Slack, whatever your communication means are. So like I'll add robot reveal videos, or I'll go and get something from somewhere else and throw it out and kind of start the conversation that way. We try to have other topics too that aren't always robots. So like we have different channels. We have a sports channel and a games channel and stuff, so they can be talking about other stuff, and then we'll tie it back into robots sometimes. Like a lot of F1 racing, because one of our mentors really likes F1, and I've gotten into it now too. And then we have a fantasy football league and some games that get played amongst a bunch of people. And whatever we can do to just kind of get other stuff happening, because then the robot stuff can happen too. But it doesn't happen. It's not like it's in any way perfect. And there's a bunch of people who aren't engaged who were super engaged last year, and I'm still trying to figure out what's up with them. But some of it is, like Andrew said, it's hard to be virtual, and they're having to do all this work and be at home all the time and take care of little kids or help their families and all of that stuff. So it's not easy, but I think there are things we can do to try to keep communication going within the team.
For the question that Lucia asked, like you guys all at different teams, like there's nothing definite about what the season's going to look like. How much of an impediment is that for you all? Because like I also work in FLL, and a lot of the coaches there, they're really kind of what's going on, and
so for us, I try to be as honest with the kids as I can be, which is that anytime an announcement comes out, it goes in our Slack, we talk about it, and I tell them we just don't know. As a team, we know that we're doing everything we can virtually, because that's what we can control right now. And when we can control more, we'll start doing that. But we're just as open as we can, and knowing that the robot was never the mission to begin with, right? The robot is a big important part of it. Like what he says, the campfire that the tribe gathers around, but it's not. If the robot stopped existing, if First no longer exists, I would still figure out a way to do cool stuff with the kids, and that's what we're doing right now. Yeah, I think that's just what we're gonna keep trying to do, and just be open with them that that's what we're doing, and we're not able to do the normal stuff, and it sucks that we can't, but other things are interesting too.
I just thought of something else that we were going to do. We were looking at doing, and it was like 3D printing some sumo bots, and having something where the kids could something that we could drive around to a couple of the kids' homes, and they could build them, and we could do something with that. Like Scott, do you remember we were going to collect them back up and somehow do just an internal robot competition with something really simple like that?
Yeah, try to get every student to be able to build, customize, and program their own little bot, and then we would just have a few dedicated drivers, quote unquote, putting them in a ring and letting them battle each other and do a full bracket. So something to keep interest up and give them something hands-on that is tangible, that they can be taking and still feeling part of the team.
All right, we just pushed past 8:30, so if no one else has anything, I think we'll call it a day. So I think we're gonna stick to this being the new 2 weeks, so no meeting next Monday, meeting the following Monday, because we skipped last week.
That seems like the way to go.
Because I definitely forgot about it entirely, and I almost forgot about this meeting again. So we'll figure it out. But yeah, feel free if you are remembering, bug me, because now I have a lot more stuff happening, so it's easier for me to forget.